I was shoved into the shadows at the ceremony until the Alpha King led me into the light. The night of the ceremony of binding arrived under a sky that looked almost unreal. The moon hung low and bright, larger than it had ever seemed before, as if it too wished to witness what would unfold. Silver light spilled across the kingdom, touching towers, rooftops, and quiet streets, before settling at last upon the great Hall of Elders. The hall stood at the heart of the capital, ancient and unshaken by time. Its tall pillars were carved with symbols older than memory. Its domed ceiling, made of pale stone and moon glass, shimmered softly like captured starlight. Inside, the air was alive. Nobles dressed in flowing silks, warriors in polished armor, and chosen heirs of powerful bloodlines filled the vast chamber. Their voices rose and fell like waves, whispers, laughter, quiet tension. Everyone knew this night would decide more than status. It would decide destiny. At the center of the hall, a circular platform stood raised above the marble floor. Around it burned 7 sacred flames, each held in a silver basin. The flames were not ordinary fire. They did not flicker wildly or cast harsh shadows. They moved slowly, almost thoughtfully, glowing with a soft silver light. These flames were said to see truth. They chose who was worthy, and they rejected those who were not. Near the edges of the hall, where the light did not reach fully, stood a girl no one noticed, at least not at first. Her name was Alara. She wore no jewels, no crown, no mark of family or rank. Her dress was simple, dark in color, as if it had been chosen to blend into the shadows around her. And perhaps it had. Alara stood still, her hands gently clasped in front of her, her gaze lowered. She did not speak. She did not try to be seen. She had learned long ago that being unnoticed was safer, because when people did notice her, they did not look with kindness. "She should not be here," a voice whispered nearby. Alara heard it, even though it was meant to be quiet. "She has no name, no bloodline." "I heard she was found near the border forests. They say the shadows follow her." Alara kept her face calm, but inside the words settled heavily, like stones sinking into deep water. None of it was new. She had heard worse. Still, tonight felt different. Tonight she had been called, not invited, not welcomed, but called, and that meant something even if she did not yet understand what. A deep sound echoed suddenly through the hall, a long, low horn that silenced every voice at once. The ceremony had begun. At the far end of the chamber, the High Elder stepped forward. His robes shimmered with faint silver threads, and his expression carried the weight of tradition. "Tonight," he said, his voice strong but calm, "the flames will reveal what the world cannot. Step forward when your name is called and let truth decide your place." One by one, names were spoken, and one by one, chosen heirs stepped onto the platform. Each time the flames reacted. For some, they rose high and bright, surrounding the candidate in soft light. Murmurs of approval followed. For others, they flickered uncertainly, as if undecided. The hall would grow quiet then, waiting. And sometimes, the flames dimmed completely. When that happened, the silence became heavy, almost uncomfortable. Rejection needed no explanation. Alara watched it all from the shadows. She saw the pride in the chosen, the relief in their families, the quiet disappointment in those who were passed over. She saw how easily the hall accepted some and dismissed others. And slowly her heartbeat began to change. At first it was steady, then faster, then louder. As the list of names grew shorter, a strange feeling rose inside her, not hope, not exactly, but something close to it. A quiet, fragile question. What if? She quickly pushed the thought away. Hope had never been kind to her. The names continued, until at last, Alara. The name echoed through the hall, but it did not sound strong. It sounded uncertain, as if even the one who spoke it did not fully believe it belonged there. A ripple moved through the crowd. Some turned to look. Others leaned closer to whisper, "That is her. They actually called her. This is a mistake." Alara felt the weight of every gaze as she stepped forward. For a moment her feet did not move, but then she took a breath and walked. Each step toward the platform felt heavier than the last. The marble floor seemed colder beneath her feet. The air, once distant, now pressed close around her. When she reached the center, she stopped. The 7 flames burned quietly, watching, waiting. Alara lifted her gaze slightly, just enough to see them. Her hands trembled, but she did not pull back. She had come this far, she would not turn away now. "Step forward," the High Elder instructed. She did. The moment her foot touched the center of the platform, the flames reacted, but not as they had before. They did not rise, they did not glow brighter. Instead, they stilled, completely. The soft silver light faded just a little, not enough to darken the hall, but enough to be noticed. A murmur spread through the crowd. Alara waited. Nothing happened. No light, no warmth, no sign of acceptance, only stillness. The silence stretched, longer, heavier, until finally someone laughed. It was not loud, but it was enough. "I knew it," a voice said. "She has nothing. Even the flames reject her." Alara's chest tightened, but her face remained calm. She had expected this, hadn't she? Still, something inside her felt like it had quietly broken. "Step back," the High Elder said. His tone was not cruel, but it was final. Alara lowered her gaze again and stepped away. As she moved toward the edge of the platform, someone brushed past her shoulder, too hard to be an accident. She stumbled slightly. No one reached out to steady her. No one spoke in her defense. She returned to the shadows where she belonged, and just like that, the ceremony moved on as if she had never been there. Names continued to be called. The flames rose and fell. The hall returned to its rhythm, but something had changed, not outside. Inside, Alara stood still, her hands now clenched softly at her sides. She told herself it did not matter. She told herself she had expected this. She told herself she felt nothing, but the truth was quieter and deeper, she had hoped, even if only for a moment. And that made the silence of the flames harder to bear. At the center of the hall, the final name was called. The last chosen stepped forward. The flames rose bright and strong, casting silver light across the chamber. The ceremony was ending. Everything would soon return to normal. Alara turned slightly, ready to leave before anyone could notice her again. But then the flames flickered, just once. The light shifted, the air changed. It was subtle at first, a small thing, easy to miss. But then the great doors of the hall began to move, slowly, heavily, with a deep sound that echoed through the chamber. The entire hall fell silent. No one spoke. No one moved, because those doors had not been opened in centuries, and they were not meant to open tonight. Cold air slipped into the hall as the doors parted. The silver flames dimmed, not in rejection, but in response, as if something greater had entered, a presence. Old, powerful, unavoidable, footsteps echoed, slow, steady. Each one carrying a weight that could be felt, not just heard. Alara did not turn at first. She did not need to. She felt it, the shift. The pull, something in the air had changed direction, and somehow it was moving toward her. The figure stepped into the light, tall. Unshaken, cloaked not in decoration, but in presence alone. No crown was needed. Power rested on him as naturally as breath. Whispers rose instantly through the hall. "It cannot be. He has returned." The Alpha King, Alara's breath caught. She had heard stories, everyone had. A ruler who walked between legend and truth. A king who did not follow tradition, but rewrote it. And now he was here. The Alpha King did not look at the elders. He did not look at the chosen. His gaze moved across the hall only once, and then it stopped, on her. Alara felt it like a sudden stillness inside her chest. Not fear, not exactly, but something deeper, something that saw her, not as others did, not as nothing, but as something waiting. The hall held its breath, and then the Alpha King began to walk, not toward the throne. Not toward the platform, but toward the shadows, toward her. Alara did not move, she could not. Each step he took seemed to quiet the world around them. The whispers faded, the tension stilled. Even the flames seemed to lean toward him, toward them. He stopped only a few steps away, close enough that she could see his face clearly now. Calm, unreadable, but not empty, never empty. For a long moment he said nothing, and neither did she. Then at last, "You were not chosen," he said. His voice was low, steady, not unkind. But not soft either. It was truth, simple and clear. Alara lowered her gaze slightly. "I know," she replied, and she did. She had felt it, seen it, accepted it, or at least tried to. Silence followed, but it was not the same silence as before. This one felt, waiting, then. Something shifted. The Alpha King moved, just slightly. And then he did something no one in the hall expected. He raised his hand and held it out to her, not as a command, not as a test, but as an offering. The flames behind them flickered, once, then again. As if they, too, were watching what she would do. Alara stared at his hand, at the space between them, at the moment that felt like it did not belong to the world she knew. Her heart began to beat again. Loud, unsteady, real, and for the first time that night. She did not feel like she was standing in the shadows. The hall was still. Silence wrapped around every corner, every pillar, every face. All eyes were on the girl and the king. Every noble, every warrior, every elder held their breath. Alara's hand hovered over his, trembling ever so slightly. Her heart raced like a wild drum echoing through her chest. She could feel the weight of every gaze, expectation, judgment, fear, curiosity, all pressed onto her small frame. But strangely, she did not feel small. Not tonight. The Alpha King's hand remained extended. He did not pull away, he did not step closer, he simply waited. "Do you dare?" whispered one of the court nobles, her voice trembling with disbelief. Alara did not answer, she could not. Slowly, deliberately, she moved forward, one finger then another until her hand brushed against his. The contact was brief but electric, like the first spark before a storm ignites. Immediately, the sacred flames around the platform reacted. Their silver light pulsed. Then a strange golden glow began to radiate from the flames closest to her. Not just from the flames, but from her. Gasps rippled across the hall. The elders rose from their seats, frowning. "This is impossible," the High Elder said, voice tight with tension. "The flames, they do not choose her." But the flames did choose, and the Alpha King knew it. "You were not chosen by them," he said, his deep voice calm, almost gentle, "because you were never meant for them." Alara's eyes widened slightly. His words were not boastful or cruel. They carried no pride, only truth. She swallowed hard. "Then why me?" she whispered. The Alpha King's gaze softened, though it remained strong, like the edge of a mountain against a storm. "Because the world you know is smaller than the world you will shape," he said. "You are not meant for the shadows, Alara. You are meant to walk in the light that you will create." The hall remained frozen. Nobles whispered among themselves, some fearful, some incredulous. No one had ever seen him speak like this, so quiet, so certain, so unyielding. The High Elder's hands shook slightly. "The ceremony, the traditions, this is unprecedented," he muttered, though no one dared interrupt the king. Alara felt a strange warmth bloom in her chest. Not pride, not courage, something new, something like belonging. The Alpha King took a step closer, not imposing, not threatening, just closer. "Come," he said. His hand did not move to pull her, but his presence invited her forward. "Step into your place." Every eye followed. The hall was tense. The air seemed to thrum with energy. Even the flames, now fully golden around her, seemed to bend toward the Alpha King and her. Alara took a hesitant step, and then another. With each movement, the whispers of fear and doubt faded slightly, but not entirely. The nobles exchanged worried glances. "He dares to break tradition," one whispered, voice shaking. "Yes," another replied, "and we cannot stop him. The Alpha King, he decides." Alara's hand remained lightly touching his. It was as if a silent current ran between them, invisible but undeniable. For the first time in her life, she did not feel invisible. And yet, she felt exposed in a way she had never imagined. Not just to the court, not just to the king, but to herself. The Alpha King's eyes did not leave hers. "The shadows have shaped you," he said softly, almost to himself. "But they do not define you. You are more than what you have endured." Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, to take his words as truth. But the doubt, the fear, it had been with her for so long, like a constant companion. "What if I fail?" she whispered, barely audible. He smiled faintly, but it did not reach his eyes fully. "Then you will rise again and again. Because failing does not make you less, it makes you aware of what you are capable of." The words were strange, foreign, and yet comforting. The crowd around them remained silent, held hostage by the tension in the air. Some were intrigued, some fearful, others openly angry. But none dared interrupt. The Alpha King reached out, not with his hand, but with his presence, closing the space between them. "No one else can teach you what you need to know," he said. "Only experience, only choice, only courage." Alara's lips parted slightly. "And you," she asked softly, "what will you do?" "I will guide you," he replied, "but I will not decide for you. That is your path and your light." The words felt like a gentle wind brushing against a long-dormant part of her soul. A part that had been hidden, ignored, even suppressed by the world. "Step forward," he said again. "Do not wait in the shadows any longer. You are meant to stand." Alara took a deep breath. She lifted her chin slightly, meeting his gaze. The flames around her now seemed to dance more freely, casting light and shadow in a delicate play. The court murmured, some impressed, some fearful, but the Alpha King did not seem to care. His focus was on her, on the girl they had all ignored. As she stepped fully into the light, something extraordinary happened. The markings on her arms, faint, barely visible lines etched into her skin since childhood, began to glow. Soft at first, then stronger, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The court gasped. The elders whispered in fear and awe. This had never happened before. Alara's fingers tightened slightly around the Alpha King's. The warmth of his presence seemed to awaken something inside her, something older than her memories, older than her fears. I don't understand, she said softly. Why am I glowing? He looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and certainty. Because your destiny is larger than the ceremony. The flames were not wrong. They simply waited for the one who would awaken them in truth. She blinked. Her mind spun. The rules she had learned, the boundaries she had accepted, all seemed fragile now, like glass ready to break and be reshaped. Why me? She whispered again. Not for the crowd, not for the elders, not even for the flames. She asked for herself. Because the world needs someone who has seen the darkness and still chooses light, he said. The words hung in the air, heavy, poetic, true. Alara felt something shift within her, a quiet courage she had not known she possessed. The Alpha King stepped even closer, not to dominate but to share the space with her. You are not weak, he said. You are not a mistake, and you are not alone. Tears threatened at the edges of her eyes, not from sadness, not from fear, but from relief. From the realization that someone powerful, someone beyond tradition saw her, truly saw her. The court remained tense. Some looked ready to challenge the king. Others watched in stunned silence, but no one moved, no one dared. Because the Alpha King's gaze could silence more than voices. It could silence doubt itself. Alara's markings now glowed fully, golden and radiant. The flames responded, twisting around her in patterns that were almost like writing. Symbols no one in the hall recognized, but that felt ancient, alive, and sacred. She reached out slightly, letting go of fear, letting go of shame. The king's hand remained close, steady, grounding. A strange, thrilling sense of power filled her. Not arrogance, not dominance, but awareness. Awareness of what she could be. Do not be afraid of what you feel, the Alpha King whispered. It is not weakness, it is awakening. Alara nodded slowly, her heart still raced. Her mind still spun, but she did not step back. She had come too far. And now the shadows around her seemed smaller. The doubts seemed quieter. The fear almost gone, but she did not yet know that awakening always comes with a cost. Because in the distance, beyond the hall, something had begun to stir, something old, something that had waited for centuries. And it had sensed the bond, the light, the power that was rising. It whispered a name. Alara, she did not hear it yet, but the world would. And the journey had only just begun. The morning after the ceremony of binding, the great hall of elders was silent, but the kingdom itself was not. Whispers moved faster than the wind. Nobles discussed in hushed tones the impossibility they had witnessed the night before. The Alpha King had broken tradition. He had chosen the girl in the shadows, the one no one had believed worthy. But it was not only the nobles who noticed. The streets themselves seemed to hum with tension. The citizens felt a subtle shift in the air, though they could not explain why. Even the trees around the palace gardens bent slightly, as if listening. Alara did not notice any of this. She was still trying to understand herself. The night in the hall had changed something in her. The warmth of the Alpha King's hand, the glow of the flames upon her skin, the certainty in his voice, it had awakened something deep inside. And yet it terrified her. She wandered the quiet corridors of the palace, long before the sun had risen. The soft light of dawn crept through the tall windows, scattering across the polished floors. It did not warm her. Not yet. Alara touched her arms where the golden markings still glimmered faintly. Even in the daylight, they pulsed softly like a heartbeat beneath her skin. She had never seen anything like it before. Her reflection in a tall mirror startled her. The glow of the markings made her eyes look sharper, fiercer, stronger than she had ever imagined. But also different, unfamiliar. Am I becoming something I should fear? She whispered to herself. The voice of the Alpha King answered, though he was not there. She remembered what he had said. The shadows have shaped you, but they do not define you. She wanted to believe it. She wanted to hold on to the idea that she was not cursed, not dangerous. But a chill ran down her spine. The shadows of the hall had not fully left her. By midday, she was summoned to the council chamber. The Alpha King was already there, standing beside a map of the kingdom, his eyes thoughtful and far away. Alara, he said quietly, noticing her hesitation. Do not fear the eyes that watch. You are not their shadow. You are your own light. She nodded, though she did not fully understand. The council chamber was filled with maps, scrolls, and the faint scent of old parchment. The elders spoke in measured tones, choosing their words carefully, but even they could not hide their fear. You must understand, Your Majesty, one elder said, bowing slightly toward the king, that while the flames have reacted to her, it is unprecedented. The ancient rites have never failed. The traditions, they must be preserved. The Alpha King's gaze flicked to Alara. She felt the quiet strength in his eyes, calm, unwavering, protective. She is not a failure, he said firmly. She is awakening, and the kingdom will need what she becomes. An elder frowned. Awakening can be dangerous, sire. The girl's bloodline is unknown. The flames are not entirely understood. If she loses control, she will not lose control, the Alpha King interrupted. And you will see that before you doubt her again. Alara's heart beat rapidly. He believed in her, and yet the fear within her would not vanish so easily. After the council meeting, the Alpha King led her into the palace gardens. The morning sun touched the marble fountains and the trimmed hedges, but a shadow seemed to linger wherever she walked. You are not alone, he said quietly, walking beside her. But you must learn. Your power, it is not only what the flames reveal, it is also what the earth itself has been waiting for. Alara stopped, turning toward him. The earth, he nodded. Beneath the kingdom something sleeps, something old. It waits for the one who carries the mark. That is why the flames reacted. That is why you were chosen, not by tradition, but by destiny. The words made her uneasy. What is it? She asked. The Alpha King looked at her, his expression unreadable. It is a force that has existed since before the kings. It is neither evil nor good. It is necessary, and it is drawn to you. Alara's stomach twisted. She had always been careful, always quiet, always in the shadows, and now the very earth itself seemed to call her forward. Then I am cursed, she asked, voice barely above a whisper. No, he said softly. Cursed is what others will call it when they do not understand. You are chosen, that is all. But deep down, even as he spoke, she could feel the pull, a subtle vibration beneath her feet. A rhythm that matched the pulsing of her glowing markings. That night she had a dream. The dream was not like any she had before. She was standing in a vast field under a sky painted with silver and gold. The ground beneath her feet shifted, glowing faintly in patterns she could not name. The wind whispered words she almost understood, and then she saw it. A shadow rising from the ground, not cruel, not angry, not entirely alive, but aware, watching, waiting. You belong to us, it said, though the voice was not spoken aloud. It was felt. Deep in her bones, it echoed in her heart. She woke with a start, sweat clinging to her brow. The markings on her arms pulsed faintly, as if reacting to the dream. Morning light was gentle outside her window, but the unease did not leave her. Something was stirring beneath the kingdom, something powerful, something that had waited centuries for her awakening. The days passed in quiet training. The Alpha King guided her in small lessons, teaching her to feel her own power, to listen to the patterns of the flames, to sense the subtle energy that flowed beneath the palace. You must not fight it, he said one afternoon as they walked through a hidden courtyard away from the eyes of the court. You must understand it. Only then can you control it. Alara nodded, though control felt impossible. Every time she focused, her power surged unpredictably. Flames, light, shadows, they bent and twisted around her, and the pulsing beneath the ground grew stronger. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in deep reds and purples, she tried to summon the flames herself. The first attempt was small, a flicker of light, but it grew. The flames stretched toward her, curling in shapes she had never seen before, and then suddenly they surged. The golden light engulfed her hands. It spread to the platform beneath her feet. The palace walls glimmered as though alive. She gasped and stumbled backward. The Alpha King caught her firmly by the shoulders, steadying her. Breathe, he said calmly. Do not fear what you feel. Her chest heaved. It is too much, she whispered. I cannot control it. He shook his head slowly. You are not meant to control it fully yet. You are meant to understand it. Your power is awakening. That is not failure. That is life. But outside, the court and palace staff had noticed the unusual light. Rumors began to spread, fear and admiration intertwined. Some spoke of danger, others of miracles, and beneath the palace, in the ancient tunnels that had been sealed for generations, the force stirred even more. The energy of the earth pulsed in response to Alara. It had recognized her fully now, not as a shadow, but as its heir. The Alpha King led her back to her chambers that night. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You are stronger than you know, he said. Stronger than tradition, stronger than fear, but you must be patient. Everything comes in time. Alara rested her head against his chest for a moment. She did not often allow herself comfort, but here she felt it, warmth, safety, belief, and yet even as she felt it, the shadows beneath the kingdom whispered again. "You are ours," they murmured. She shivered, knowing this was only the beginning. The next day, strange occurrences began across the palace. Floors trembled slightly. Objects shifted without explanation. Servants whispered of shadows moving where there should be none. Ilara's power was growing faster than she could predict. Every surge left her breathless, yet exhilarated. The markings on her arms glowed stronger, golden light intertwining with soft silver threads she did not understand. The Alpha King watched her carefully, his expression unreadable but alert. He knew the stakes. He knew that if she lost control, the consequences could ripple beyond the palace walls, beyond the kingdom itself. And yet, he also knew that if she embraced it, if she learned, she could be the most powerful force the world had ever seen. The choice would be hers. But before the choice could be made, the shadows tested her. One evening, alone in the training halls, she attempted to summon the flames again. The energy erupted from her hands, stronger than before, surging through the room. For a moment it was beautiful, pure light, bending and twisting like living silver and gold. Then the energy reacted to something unseen beneath the floor. A ripple of dark force answered her light. The walls shook. The torches flickered. The floor beneath her feet quivered as if warning her. Ilara stumbled, fear rising. She reached out instinctively toward the Alpha King, toward anyone, but he was not there. The force beneath her was alive, ancient, and curious. It tested her. And in that moment she understood. Her power was not just hers. It belonged in part to something older. Something that had chosen her and now sought to challenge her. Her heart raced. Her chest burned. The markings on her arms glowed like molten gold, leaving trails of light in the air. She gasped, summoning all her courage. "I will not be afraid," she whispered. And in that instant, the Alpha King's voice echoed in her mind, calm and steady. "You are your own light. Choose it." The shadows beneath the palace quivered as if acknowledging the challenge. And for the first time, Ilara realized the truth. The curse was not outside her. It was within. The night was heavy, darker than any Ilara had seen since the ceremony of binding. The moon had disappeared behind thick clouds, leaving the kingdom in deep shadow. Even the stars seemed to shrink from the events about to unfold. Ilara stood at the edge of the palace garden, the golden glow of her markings lighting the space around her. The Alpha King was beside her, silent, calm, but his presence radiated strength and reassurance. Together they faced the unknown, a force older than the kingdom, a force that had called her name for centuries. Beneath their feet, the earth trembled. The ancient power she had felt for weeks was rising, drawing nearer, responding to the light within her. The ground cracked slightly, releasing faint whispers that wound around her mind, twisting her thoughts with temptation, doubt, and fear. Ilara's hands rose instinctively. The golden markings pulsed brighter, stretching up her arms like rivers of light. The air around her shimmered, alive with energy. "You feel it, don't you?" the Alpha King asked softly. She nodded, voice barely a whisper. It is calling me, trying to pull me down to take control." He placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "It is testing you. But remember, this is not its power. It is yours. You choose how to respond." She swallowed hard, her heart pounded, mind spinning. For the first time, she understood the full weight of what she had become. She was not just a girl in the shadows. She was a force in her own right. A power that could shape the fate of the kingdom. The ground beneath her began to crack wider. From the fissures, a dark mist rose, curling toward her like living smoke. Shadows swirled, forming shapes, faces she could not recognize, hands reaching for her, whispers that seemed to know her deepest fears. "Do not let it control you," the Alpha King said, his voice cutting through the noise. "You are your own light, Ilara. Claim it." Ilara closed her eyes. She drew in a steady breath. The whispers tried to tempt her, calling her cursed, calling her weak, calling her unworthy. "You are nothing," they hissed, but she remembered his words. "You are your own light. You are not nothing. You are chosen." Her eyes snapped open. The golden light flared brighter, pushing back the shadows. The dark mist recoiled as if startled by her power. For the first time, she felt confident, strong, and ready to face what had waited for her so long. A shape began to emerge from the darkness. Tall, towering, shifting, not cruel, not kind, ancient, vast, the presence of it filled the garden, the palace, the very air itself. "Ilara," it whispered in a voice that was felt, not heard. "You were expected, you belong to us." "No," she said firmly, stepping forward. Her hands glowed with golden light. "I belong to myself." The force pulsed, dark energy swirling around her, testing her. Shadows lashed out, but she did not flinch. Instead, she stretched her hands higher. Her markings burned brighter than ever, streams of gold and silver entwining around her like a river of living light. "You will not control me," she said, her voice carried clearly, strong, unwavering. "I am not your shadow. I am my own light." The Alpha King moved closer. He raised his hand, allowing hers to rest lightly against his. Together, their presence formed a bond of warmth, strength, and certainty. Her light flared even brighter in response, filling the garden, pushing the shadows back. For a moment, silence fell. Even the earth seemed to hold its breath. Then slowly the darkness began to shrink, not completely gone but restrained. It was no longer a force against her, it was part of her now, bending to her will. Elara took a deep breath, feeling the balance she had never known before. Power once frightening now felt familiar, controlled. Her arms glowed steadily, the golden and silver markings flowing seamlessly together. "You have chosen," the ancient voice murmured almost approvingly. "And in choosing, you become more than you were meant to be." Elara felt relief, but it was tempered with understanding. Power came with responsibility. She had been given a choice, and she had chosen courage over fear, light over shadow. The Alpha King smiled faintly. "You are ready," he said softly. "Not because you are perfect, but because you are brave enough to face yourself." Her heart swelled. She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time she felt seen in a way deeper than words. I couldn't have done this without you," she whispered. He shook his head gently. "No, you did this yourself. I only helped you remember what you already had inside. The light, the strength, the courage, that has always been yours." For a long moment they stood together in quiet. The shadows had not disappeared completely, but they were no longer threatening. They lingered at the edges, respectful, acknowledging her control. The court, which had gathered quietly in the palace gardens upon hearing of the disturbance, watched in awe. The golden light illuminated the faces of nobles, warriors, and elders alike. Whispers spread. Fear had turned to awe, doubt had turned to reverence. The Alpha King turned to them. "The girl you cast aside," he said, his voice strong, echoing across the garden, "is the one who will help lead this kingdom into a new era. Do not mistake her past for her potential. She is not a shadow. She is our light." Murmurs swept through the crowd. The elders exchanged looks, some skeptical, some hopeful. The kingdom itself seemed to pause, acknowledging the weight of his words. Elara felt a soft warmth on her cheek. She looked up to see the Alpha King smiling at her, not with pride but with deep respect. She smiled back, feeling something settle inside her that she had never felt before: belonging, purpose, strength. That night the kingdom slept under a quiet moon. The glow from the palace garden had faded, leaving the night peaceful. But inside her chambers, Elara did not sleep. She touched her arms where the golden markings now pulsed softly, steady and calm. They no longer frightened her. They were hers, a part of her power, a reminder of her courage. She thought of the shadows that had tested her, of the ancient force beneath the earth, of the trials she had faced and won. And she knew the truth: power was not something to fear, it was something to understand, to guide, and to protect. The Alpha King entered silently, standing at the edge of her chamber. "You have done more than anyone expected," he said softly, "but remember, this is only the beginning." Elara looked at him. "I know, but I am ready," he nodded. "Good, because the world will need your light more than you know." They stood together in quiet, a bond forged not by fear, but by trust, courage, and shared strength. And as the first light of dawn crept across the horizon, painting the palace in shades of gold and silver, Elara understood something she had never realized before. She was no longer the girl in the shadows. She had walked into the light, and she would never be unseen again. The kingdom itself seemed to recognize this. Birds sang louder, trees swayed gently. Even the wind carried a subtle warmth, as if celebrating the rise of a new force, one that would shape the destiny of all who lived within its reach. Elara stepped to the window, looking out over the city. The streets were calm, but she could feel the potential of the world beyond. Challenges, yes. Doubts, yes. Danger, perhaps, but she was ready. And beside her, the Alpha King stood silently, ever watchful, ever strong, yet never overshadowing her. Together they had faced the darkness. Together they had turned fear into courage. Together they had awakened a power that would protect the kingdom, guide the people, and write a new story for all who dwelled there. Elara lifted her head, letting the golden light pulse faintly across her arms, the mark of her strength, her choice, and her destiny. The shadows of the past had tested her. The earth itself had challenged her. But she had chosen her own path, and in that choice she had become more than she had ever imagined. Final cliffhanger, ending hook. The light was hers, but a legend, she realized, was never truly finished. And somewhere beyond the mountains and rivers of the kingdom, the whispers began again. The girl from the shadows has become the light, but the world is not ready for all she can become.